And the little crews started to ask me to invest in their projects. Over time, we incorporated all of these crews into the criminal enterprise. The gang I hung out with, they were called the Sweats. And Peter's brother was the oldest one, and he wouldn't let Peter join. So I ended up splintering off because they were brutalising Peter. When I got arrested, the police paperwork labelled as a continuous criminal enterprise, which is like RICO, crime syndicate, conspiracy, all these organised crime charges, and then they rank everybody in order, you know, who's the boss, etc. Before all that though, it was just like we were just a group of friends getting our hustle on, making money, like dorms and sororities saying we need like 100 for our parties here. So I'm thinking, all right, yeah, we're on to something. They said they wanted me to work with them, and I said, you guys are doing these coloured pills, you know, we've got the good base presses from Amsterdam, we're going to stay with our own product. Who the F are you disrespecting our product? One call to Sammy the Bull and we can have you taken out to the desert.
Alright, boom. Back in full effect. Do you know what? This gentleman sitting opposite me, I have a lot of admiration for. Watch his material all the time, so inspiring. And for me, he's just like a great example of just reinvention as far as, you know, given your past and, you know, just trying to do better going forward. We have Mr. Shaun Attwood in the building today. How are we doing, sir? You alright?
Man, everything's going really good in my life right now. I made it last. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's a must. I mean, I really consider you a heavyweight of this sort of online media world. And you do a tremendous job, Shaun, to be honest, man. So, yeah, it's much salute to you for that, man.
Thanks to my team, though. We've got 20 people working on the channel. I've got 6 co-hosts, and everyone is a combined effort,
Yeah. But if we were to sort of get into you a little bit, and would be fair to say you've got quite the story, you know, to say the least, sort of thing. And you know, you've been on so many different platforms, just sharing your experiences and, you know, telling everyone your story. But if we can sort of just get into that, just a little bit on the beginning side of things, and I'd like to ask you, because obviously we've got a bit of a history as well. I've interviewed yourself previously, and I want to ask you, as a young man, like, what was ambition to you? Because I mean, it's almost like you prophesised what we were trying to do for the future a little bit when all of your friends used to sit under a tree and then, you know, used to have these prophecies. So what was ambition to you as a young man, if you could tell us?
I'm getting messages from people now saying, I've just been to the thinking tree.
Oh shit.
And mates and witnesses said, people, like Scousers and people have come from Manchester, and we have to show them where the thinking tree is.
Oh wow, it's a tourist attraction now, basically.
It started, wait till when this documentary goes out with Sammy the Bull, they filmed at the thinking tree.
Oh wow.
So it's going to take off then, I reckon. So, top of Widnes, my hometown, chemical manufacturing town, there's a quarry, Pexhill Quarry. Trees go around the rim of the quarry. One of the trees we call the thinking tree. That's where me, Wildman, Wildman's cousin Hammy, we would sit. And Hammy would say to us, what are you going to do, you know, when you get old? Atty, they call me Atty for Attwood.
Right.
And then I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to America, make $1 million in the stock market and fly you guys over. And then he says to Wildman, what are you going to do when you get older? And Wildman's got red dots in his head telling him to hurt himself. He's been picking school teachers up and putting them in rubbish bins, and he's grown massive. And the teachers are so scared of him, they got him outside raking leaves with the caretaker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Wildman says, I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life. I've got red dots in my head telling me to hurt people. So I go off to America after uni and do make money in the stock market as prophesised. Wildman goes off to prison. I think he was in there about 5 years. And as I'm rising up the ranks as a stockbroker, Wolf of Wall Street style in the beginning, when Wildman gets out of prison, I flew him over. And that's when everything changed drastically and the criminal enterprise began.
It began.
Yeah.
And I mean, you said a town just outside Liverpool, where you come from?
So, it's in between Liverpool and Manchester.
Right.
A little bit closer to Liverpool, but if we go Manchester, they call us Scousers.
Right.
And if we go Liverpool, they call us Wollybacks.
Oh, Wollybacks. Yeah, because I'm thinking, coming from a place like that and going over to America. Now, you'd been America previously, you've got family out there, so you're familiar, but I mean, going there to establish yourself as far as living there, making your money there. Like, that must have been a bit different. So talk to us a bit about adapting to that sort of environment.
I was dazzled by it.
Yeah.
I think I was 16, went to America and changed my date of birth, my passport, so I was 21. Took me out nightclub. You got to be 21 to get in the nightclubs.
Right.
And she's introducing me to all these beautiful American women as Paul McCartney's nephew.
Yeah.
I'm just like a nobody from a little town in the northwest of England, and now I've got all these beautiful American women coming up to me, and they hear the accent, they roll out the red carpet. I'm thinking, I want some of this when I finish my education. So that's straight to Arizona.
Yeah.
Planes coming into land, you see all the swimming pools in the backyards, the sun's always out. It's the complete opposite of industrial northwest England.
Yeah, well, you know, basically.
Yeah.
No, amazing. And if we was to sort of touch on the rave scene now. Now, as far as the UK, hopefully I don't get this one wrong, but I think it hit the UK in the late 80s, I believe. And that was around the same time you'd already moved over to the States?
I moved to the States in 91. Summer of Love, I think, was 88. I think they got 10p in Tenerife in 87. And I started to hear the house music coming through with my girlfriend. And then it just started to blow up in the UK in the years after that. And then 89, 90, we were in Manchester at the Thunderdome on Oldham Road, the Conspiracy. Not the Hacienda so much, that was a bit more touristy. We were going to more like the backstreet grimier ones.
Right.
Thunderdome was my all-time favourite, to be honest, but it got closed down, and Conspiracy got closed down as well.
So when did it hit the States then? Were you there? I'm assuming you were there when it actually hit.
All right, to talk about when it hit the States is much more complex.
Right.
Because you've got England, right? Manchester was one centre of it, London was another centre of it, and it spread across the entire country. America's like this big compared to England.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what I've learned, because I lived in Arizona on the West Coast for 16, 17 years, is the musical trends vary. They'll come in on the coasts. So New York will get like a European trend first, perhaps. LA will get a European trend first, and it'll start to permeate. But some of the other states were still listening to death metal and country western and all this other stuff was more popular. The rave scene was just kind of like seeping in the major hubs. Chicago house music, Detroit, you got Juan Atkins, Detroit techno, and spreading slowly to the other states. So when I arrived in Phoenix and turned the radio on, they were playing UB40, Prince, Michael Jackson.
Okay.
It was hard to find anything like the 808 Stage Show that was common out of Manchester. So I went to a gay bar called the Silver Dollar Club. That's where I was told to go, and a club called, I think it was the Blue Iguana, in the early 90s, and that's where I met Sandra Collins, who became massive. I met Eddie Amador, who became massive. These are DJs. And they were just like local DJs.
Right.
And I had all these tapes I'd recorded from the 808 show, Stu Allen, Manchester Piccadilly Radio, from the late 80s. And they were all like fighting over the tapes.
No way.
Yeah. And then years later, they just, became internationally famous DJs. And so what I'm getting at here is the rave scene was just starting. It hadn't really happened.
Started brewing a little bit.
It was brewing in the gay clubs and some of these other clubs, but it wasn't an underground scene yet, which these people I met were beginning to create. And that's how I clicked up with the starters of it.
Yeah.
And as it got into the mid-90s, and I'm pulling up in my twin-turbo Mazda RX-7 in these ghettos and industrial warehouse areas, this is how I got the nickname the Bank of England. Because I'm pulling up, we've got Commander Tom blasting on the Bose surround sound system, just all this German techno. And then people are like, who are these people? And that's how we clicked up with more of the locals. They saw I was making money in the stock market and nicknamed me the Bank of England. And the little crews started to ask me to invest in their projects. Over time, we incorporated all of these crews into the criminal enterprise. Yeah.
The Shaun Attwood family, basically.
Yes.
No, 100%.
Marcus Schultz. You heard of him?
No.
Check how many followers Marcus Schultz has got right now.
Yeah.
He was a local DJ, and now he's massive.
And what's his sound? Is it mainly the techno stuff?
House, trance back then. I think he's got millions of followers now, and he just gigs Marcus Schultz, yeah.
Schultz, as in ULT.
SCHULTZ, I think it is. Yeah, he was just
America's Best DJ winner, head of global.
He's got millions now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's on about 200 something K, almost 300K.
On what's that on?
Followers at Instagram.
On Instagram, okay. I think on YouTube he's got millions or
352K on you, which is fucking sick.
He's good, yeah.
Right, now I'll definitely check out some of his stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So you was with him in sort of the early days?
In the early days, these guys were just the local DJs.
Yeah.
But they all blew up as the rave scene expanded, yeah.
No, sick. So if I can just divert your attention quickly on a certain individual, right? Mm-hmm. Someone very near and dear to yourself. Okay. And always we have to say R.I.P. and, God bless.
Yeah.
Peter, a.k.a. Wildman, right? I mean, some of the stories that you say about him are so off the wall, basically, you know what I mean? So he was there with you pretty much throughout your whole entire journey, we can say, a little bit.
So, clicked up as kids. I was part of a little crew or a gang, not like the gangs you got now, like killing each other, just innocent gang on little hanging out, listening to our boom box. And the gang I hung out with, they were called the Sweats. And Peter's brother was the oldest one, and he wouldn't let Peter join. So I ended up splintering off because they were brutalising Peter. I ended up splintering off with him, and he was 2 years younger than me, which is a lot.
It is, yeah.
So I bonded with him when he was little, and I was old, and he looked up to me before he just became, well, when he died, he was 6'2" and 29.5 stone.
Right.
Yeah. Probably I would have been scared of him if I didn't know him. I would have crossed the road if I'd seen him, especially if he was on meth and crack and all that.
Yeah, 100%.
He was up for days. But we had this relationship from childhood where he looked up to me, I took him under my wing, and then he just grew massive and he protected me. He would have took a bullet for me, but he also attracted a lot of mayhem as well, because he enjoyed making mayhem of his own accord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even listening to him when obviously you was doing the podcast things early and you had him as a guest.
Yeah.
I mean, hearing his insight on certain stuff, you knew that it's probably best to leave this guy alone, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as far as like, did you ever have that conversation with PR? Just you let him know how you felt about him, sort of thing. So
on the thinking tree, right? I said to Peter, I'm going to make $1 million in the stock market. I'm going to fly you to America. You're going to get a job as a wrestler. I'm going to have you fighting Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan. This is how idealistic I was at 20 years old. I thought I could really channel his violent energy into becoming a wrestler, and they would be set for the rest of his life. I didn't see what was really going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was going to be dead bodies and houses blown up and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I asked that question is because, like, you know, it gets to a point where there's a lot of death happening, and it's always, I think it's always best to establish some kind of dialogue between people that you care about in order to let them know sort of what you mean to each other. Yeah. And obviously you and Wildman being yin and yang, it's like, maybe, you know, you was doing a lot, both of you, so maybe you was probably too distracted at the time to actually sit down and be like, you know what, bro, like, you're really my guy, sort of thing, you know what I mean?
Look, at the peak of the mayhem, when my top ecstasy salesperson and him fell out, Skinner's been interviewed, actually. He's never been interviewed before. He's in the Sammy the Bull documentary.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So Skinner was my little brother. I took him from homelessness to being my top ecstasy salesman. He had a house, a missus, a child. And then when Wildman came over and I started hanging out more with Wildman, Skinner got jealous. So he schemed. Wildman, I think he was on his second or third deportation prison. And what Skinner did was, he had Wild Woman's apartment firebombed. Yeah,
I remember this.
Yeah, and Wildman then was on a one track to murder Skinner when he came back to America. And Skinner got so scared he went to the cops. Cops had 10 witness statements over the years, but they never had the inside scoop from someone who worked for me, who knew everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a shame, man. You know, people like that.
I have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
I've told him, little brother, I forgive you for that. I take responsibility for everyone I brought in, and I understand the reasons why you did it.
Respect to you, Shaun. You know, accountability is everything. You know, so respect for you for that.
Thank you.
So let's get back to being in Arizona.
Yeah.
So your antennas are up pretty much when you sort of realise that the e-pills are a bit scarce. So you make a sort of an arrangement to buy 1,000 pills.
Yeah.
After you purchase it, you go back to Arizona.
Yeah.
You're in full business mode at this point, aren't you? I mean, spidey senses are just all over the place.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm seeing an arbitrage opportunity. What happened was, 2 carloads of us went to LA. There was me and Wildman in the RX, and there was Seth, a big guy.
Yeah.
And Acid Joey, another guy.
Rest in peace as well.
They're all dead.
Oh,
They're all dead.
Wow,
all of them are dead. Yeah, Acid Joey was found dead in his swimming pool with all his clothes on.
Messed up.
I think he was only in his 20s or early 30s. Seth, God bless him, died about 5 years ago. Seth got heavily into meth with Wildman. He was a stockbroker, but after hanging out with Wildman for a few weeks, he came into the work high on meth, picked up a computer and threw it at our boss and got fired.
Wow.
And next thing he was out collecting crack debts in Central Phoenix with Wildman for the Colombians with all of these ripped clothes. But God bless Seth, he looked after me as well. So what happened was, Peter came over, got him a place at the Georgian Dragon, dead body on the doorstep, moved him in with a gangster disciple. He smashed that guy, got moved out of that apartment, ended up in an apartment in Tempe, Rancho Murrieta, and that's where it started. We got the 1,000 pills, they went in a weekend, and I'm thinking, do I want to make money off the party scene and sit here with strippers and people of the night and gangsters and feel like I'm a character in a movie? This is the beginning of my gangsteritis now. I've just made clear on every video, I'm not a gangster. I'm a business studies graduate who went wild, who's watched too many gangster movies, and it goes to your head, that's what gangsteritis is. Or do I want to be doing this Wolf of Wall Street thing where I'm doing 500 cold calls a day, got to be in a sales meeting at 6 in the morning, cold calling up to 9, 10 at night. F that, I'm going to go down the route of importing ecstasy pills, and that fateful decision caused me to lose everything eventually.
Amazing. Can I ask, initially when you had made the decision to go and do this deal in LA, did you want to get the pills for your mates, or was it a thing that you wanted to actually get involved in some kind of business with the pills?
So I was buying 50 to 100 locally and giving most of them away. But I was starting to sell some of them, and so many people were asking me for them. I was like, hold on a minute, there's a business opportunity here. So that's when, like you said, the spidey senses started kicking in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, people were coming from like Arizona University, like dorms and psoriasis, saying we need like 100 for our parties here. So I'm thinking, all right, we're onto something. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you really did create, I don't know how we can put it to try and justify what Shaun was actually doing at the time, but you created a damn near mountain that you was right on top on, and you popped your flag down and said, yeah, this is us sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it was literally a syndicate almost, right?
All right,
you had a bit of a hierarchy.
I want to rephrase this. This. When I got arrested, the police paperwork labelled as a continuous criminal enterprise, which is like RICO, crime syndicate, conspiracy, all these organised crime charges, and then they rank everybody in order, who's the boss, etc. Before all that, though, it was just like we were just a group of friends getting our hustle on, making money. We weren't like we're like a cartel or anything like that. We did joke that we had crime family dinner every month.
Crime family dinner.
Yeah, but that was just us having a joke, taking the piss.
Right.
We weren't like we're like the mafia now, and this guy's the boss and this guy's the underboss. It was quite innocent, really. It was the cops who structured us as a crime syndicate and put everybody in order of, ranking. Yeah. So,
as far as the hierarchy that you sort of had amongst your mates, as far as the distribution, talk to me about the hierarchy. How did you put people where you thought they needed to be, sort of thing?
All right. So, I took my business studies knowledge and structured it like a corporation. So there's factions, and each faction has got a head. Now this didn't happen overnight. Bear in mind, in the very beginning, I had to learn the ropes. I was schooled by the New Mexican Mafia about which lawyer to get, and I used their lawyer in the end. Schooled by the New Mexican Mafia about not carrying guns and weapons, because then you got more charges if they catch you, and police procedures and law and all that kind of stuff. And it took years. In the beginning, I was reckless. It took years to get to the point where I'm living in a house on the side of a mountain in a gated guarded community. I won't speak to anyone on the phone, because that's going to be evidence used against me. My right-hand guy, Cody Bates, he's dead as well now. Courtney Bates, people can Google that. Hung himself in a Scientology rehab after they put him on meds that had an effect of suicidal thoughts. Cody Bates, he was the sober one at the time.
He didn't take anything, basically.
Nothing. He would babysit people. He had a security license. He was the head of the security team, and if people get out of control, he would babysit them or run people home. He was a very responsible individual. He rented an apartment just for the cash, just for the drugs, that nobody knew where that existed. So he would go to that apartment, get a quantity of drugs required by the different heads of the factions, go to their locations and drop the drugs off, get the cash, take it back to the apartment. If everything was running smoothly, he would come to my house in Tucson, drive 100 miles, come and see me. We would chat. We communicated on pages, so nothing was said. And if everything's going smoothly, great. If things are not going smoothly, how are we going to address that situation? And we come up with a solution. Yeah.
So he was basically like a right hand of yours.
If you're going to structure it like the mafia structure it, the cops would describe him as an underboss.
Right.
Because everyone deals with the underboss, don't they? They don't deal with the guy.
No,
So he's not going to get arrested. These guys might get arrested and snitch him out, but they can't say they dealt with me. Yeah. No,
mad interesting, honestly.
Yeah.
And if we talk about the height of your sort of, career, if you like, you had a home in Tucson, Arizona, which was damn near a mansion, right?
So I think it was 5 bedrooms, swimming pool. There was it's on the mountain, so these monsoonal rains would come, and a stream and a waterfall would form right by the house. Most beautiful place I've ever lived in my life. I'd go to the mailbox and there'd be deer stood around the mailbox. Bobcats would come, like little cats with leopard prints. Wild pigs, javelinas. I'd be out there with a box of javelinas, sat down so they wouldn't scare away, throwing all these Fruit Loops at the javelinas. And my wife would come running out, what the fuck you doing? Don't feed javelinas. Oh, I love that place, man.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney was a few miles down the mountain range.
Yeah, your uncle, basically.
Yeah, Uncle Paul. That's where Linda actually died in Tucson.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you also had, notably as well, Joe Bonanno, the boss of the Bananas. He weren't too far away.
The original mafia boss. I think he was the longest running boss of the Mafia Council. He never got whacked. He fell out with the guys in New York. They ran him out of New York and he ended up in Tucson, where he retired safely. And actually, one of his guys, later on in prison, Two Tonys, who wrote a book about the mafia philosopher, he took me under his wing later on in prison and told me so many stories about the Bananos. And I wrote,
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So speaking of the Italian mafia, would it be fair to say things took a little turn for the worst when the presence of Sammy the Bull Gravano came over to Arizona, having been released from prison over the whole John Gotti RICO situation, him cooperating, he got a deal. He comes out to Arizona, where Mr. Shaun Attwood is the man, pretty much. He's got it popping over in Arizona, and I guess he wanted in. So would it be fair to say his sort of presence coming into the city or the state or whatever, that kind of like made things sort of upside down a little bit?
All right, it's more complex than that. Let me clarify it. All right, so we've got all the locals working for us, and we dress and act in a certain way. All of a sudden, these steroid head jock characters in the leopard print polyester shirts, big guys, start showing up at the clubs and raves selling these coloured pills. So we're like, who the F are these guys? Now, my wife at the time, she was doing lesbian internet porn when I met her. She had a bisexual female lover who started dating one of these guys, who arranged a sit down at a bar called Heart 5 in Tucson. I'm like, I do want to meet these guys. They've requested to meet you. I do want to meet them. Don't know who they are. Took one of my guys, Rossetti. I've got to change the names for legal reasons. It's close. One of the Rossetti brothers. I took him, I said to him, look, if these guys snatch me out of here, open up on the motherfuckers, and he snuck in behind me and my wife. They took me into the VIP room, and the bottom line was, they said they wanted me to work with them, and I said, you guys are doing these coloured pills, you know, we've got the good base presses from Amsterdam, we're going to stay with our own product. There was 2 guys, one was the Spaniard and one was the 6.5 foot blonde, looked like a bodybuilder. The blonde guy jumps off the sofa when I said about the coloured pills.
Yeah.
Who the F are you disrespecting our product? One call to Sammy the Bull and we can have you taken out to the desert. Now, I didn't know whether he was just blowharding or it was legit. But as I left, I'm telling Rossetti on the way out, they're claiming they're with Sammy the Bull, and he's like, oh shit, John Gotti, you know, this guy's murdered a lot of people, this could get heavy. We still didn't know what was going on, whether that was true or not. What happened was, Skinner, my top sales guy, he got enticed to a nightclub in Scottsdale by a clique that we later found out was working for the Gravano enterprise. They smashed his teeth out, took his gun, money, his product, and that's when we realised there was a problem going on with the dynamics of the market. Now, some of the stuff you said before was a bit of a simplification. The ecstasy ring that was now in competition with mine was started by a guy called Mike Papa.
Right.
It was part of the Devil Dogs, which were like, they would attack people and bark and yelp like dogs.
Sounds like a motorcycle gang.
I think they were more like a bit right-wing.
Right.
Yeah, because they did have the motorcycle gangs out there as well. And then what happened was Mike Papa brought Gerard Gravano and Karen Gravano into that ecstasy ring.
The children of
yes.
Sammy, yeah.
He didn't bring Sammy the Bull in.
Right.
Sammy the Bull was never, from a street level perspective, running that ecstasy ring. From a street level perspective, Mike Papa and Gerard Gravano were making the decisions and knew what was going on. Now what happened was, the kids went to the dad, and the dad invested money in it and gave them advice about it. And the cops caught the son, Gerard, asking for money for gas, which was money to put into an ecstasy deal.
Okay.
And that call was one of the key pieces of evidence that enabled the feds to make this big headline saying, we've busted Sammy the Bull's ecstasy ring. Technically, it wasn't really his ecstasy ring. He was the biggest name associated with it, so that's why they ran with it. But he was very, you know, old school Italian mafia, don't get involved in drugs and all that kind of thing. So he's embarrassed. When I've seen him called out about it, he looked people straight in the eye and said he had nothing to do with the ecstasy business. Even one of the cops on the case said that in another documentary I did. I think it was for Vice on that Geo about it.
That's crazy because he did 18 years, didn't he, for the ecstasy ring?
I can't remember if it was 15 or 18.
Yeah, he done quite some considerable amount of time for it. So
oh yeah, and they said to him, we'll let the wife go and we'll let the daughter go. So the men took the beef.
Right.
So Gerard got a heavy sentence. Sammy the Bull got a heavy sentence. The prosecutor got the trophy, and they let the women walk. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's some scumbag shit, to be honest. Like,
yeah, these prosecutors out there, they're evil. They're bigger criminals than the people in the justice system.
100%, because that is just, mate.